The message came through the deep space relay at 0300 hours, ship time. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his third cup of coffee when the communication officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, you need to see this. Priority 1. Transmission from... Well, sir, it's not from Earth." Jake set down his mug and walked to the bridge of the EDF Valiant. The ship was humanity's newest deep space explorer, designed to push the boundaries of known space. They had been mapping star systems for 6 months, finding nothing but empty planets and dead rocks. This was different. The main screen flickered to life, showing a being unlike anything in Earth's databases, tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer like crystal in the light. When it spoke, the universal translator struggled with the unfamiliar language patterns. "People of Earth," the alien said, its voice filled with desperation. "I am Ambassador Keth of the Viridian Republic. We have watched your species from afar, seen your broadcasts, learned your languages. We know you value life, all life. Please, if you can hear this, we need your help." The image shifted, showing cities burning under alien skies. Massive ships, organic and twisted, hung over the destruction like dark clouds. Civilians ran through. Streets as creatures, the size of tanks, hunted them down. "The Zarathi swarm has come to our worlds. 4 of our 7 systems have fallen in 3 weeks. They consume everything, plants, animals, people. They turn our own dead against us. Our military cannot stop them. Our allies have abandoned us. You are our last hope." Jake watched the horror unfold on screen. Children crying for parents who would never come home. Soldiers making last stands against impossible odds. Cities that had stood for thousands of years reduced to ash and bone. "We know we have no right to ask this of strangers," the ambassador continued. "But if there is any mercy in your species, any compassion, please help us. We will give you anything: technology, resources, knowledge. We ask only for the chance to live." The transmission ended with coordinates and star charts. The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of the ship's engines. "Sir?" asked Lieutenant Katie Wells, the ship's tactical officer. "What are your orders?" Jake stared at the empty screen for a long moment. Earth's first contact with alien life, and it was a cry for help from the dying. Every protocol said to return home immediately and report to command. But those protocols had been written by people who had never seen children running from monsters. "Set course for Earth," Jake said finally. "Maximum speed. And send everything we just received to Admiral Carter. Tell her we need the biggest guns we have." The trip back to Earth took 18 hours. 18 hours during which Jake couldn't stop thinking about those burning cities. He had joined the Earth Defense Force to protect humanity, but the oath he had taken was simpler than that. Protect the innocent. All innocent life. When they reached Earth orbit, Admiral Lisa Carter was waiting for them aboard the command station. She was a small woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. She had fought in the water wars, the resource conflicts, and every major battle of the past 20 years. If anyone could help the Viridians, it was her. "Captain Morrison," she said as Jake entered her office, "I've reviewed your transmission. My science teams confirm it's genuine. The question is what we do about it." "Ma'am, with respect, those people are dying." "Those aliens are dying, Captain. Not our problem, according to some people in government. We've got our own issues here on Earth." Jake felt his jaw tighten. "Since when do we abandon people because they're different?" The Admiral smiled grimly. "That's exactly what I told the politicians, which is why I'm giving you command of Task Force Angel, 3 heavy cruisers, 2 destroyers, and the best soldiers Earth has to offer." She activated a holographic display showing ship schematics and personnel files. Tony Rivers, demolitions, expert. Fought in the Australian campaign, Katie Wells, sniper and tactical officer. Ben Adams, combat medic who saved 200 lives in the siege of New York. Amy Foster, our best tech specialist. They've all volunteered. Volunteered for what, ma'am? To go die in space for people they've never met, Captain, because that's what humans do. She paused, studying the star charts. The Viridian Republic is 47 light-years away. Even with our fastest ships, it's a month-long journey. By the time we arrive, there might be nothing left to save. Jake nodded. Then we better leave now. There's something else you need to know. Our xenobiology team ran analysis on the Zarathi footage. These aren't just raiders or conquerors, they're harvesters. They consume entire populations and use the biomass to create more soldiers. Every person they capture makes them stronger. The weight of that settled on Jake's shoulders. Not just a war, but a fight against an enemy that grew stronger with every victory. How many ships do we have ready for immediate deployment? 12 capital ships, 36 support vessels, about 4,000 personnel total. She met his eyes. Against an enemy that has consumed 4 star systems. The math doesn't look good, Captain. Jake thought about the ambassador's words. Their allies had abandoned them. Everyone with sense had probably run away from the Zarathi. Everyone except humans, apparently. Admiral, why are we doing this? Really? Lisa Carter was quiet for a moment, looking out at the blue marble of Earth through her office window. You know what makes humans different from every other species we've theorized about, Captain? We're the only ones stupid enough to fight for strangers, and smart enough to know it's the right thing to do. 3 hours later, Jake stood on the bridge of the Valiant as the Earth Defense Fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. Around him, the best soldiers humanity had ever produced checked weapons and ran final diagnostics. None of them had ever seen an alien before. In a month, they would either be dead or heroes. All ships report ready, sir, Katie Wells announced. Jake looked at the tactical display showing 12 human ships against an enemy that had already proven unstoppable. Bad odds, but humans had faced bad odds before. Take us out, Lieutenant. Let's go save some aliens. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. In the empty space where they had been, only starlight remained to mark their passage toward a war that would change the galaxy forever. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Viridian space, and immediately every sensor screamed warnings. 3 massive bioships hung in orbit around the outer planet like diseased moons. Each one was the size of a city, covered in writhing tentacles and pulsing organs that glowed with sickly light. My God, whispered Communications Officer Dan Price as the images filled the main screen. They're alive. Captain Jake Morrison watched the organic ships move with predatory grace. No metal, no engines as humans understood them. These vessels had been grown, not built. And they were feeding on the planet below. Life signs? Jake asked. Negative on the surface, sir, reported Science Officer Mary Cole. But we're detecting massive biosignatures on the ships themselves. Whatever they're doing down there, they're processing it fast. Commander Steve Parker's voice came over the comm from the destroyer Hawk. Captain, I'm reading survivors on Viridian Prime. Underground bunkers, maybe 1,000 signatures. Jake felt a spark of hope. After traveling 47 light years, they weren't too late. Not completely. All ships, combat formation. Steve, take your squadron and extract those survivors. Everyone else, we make noise and keep those bioships busy. The human fleet split up, half heading for the planet while the others moved to engage the Zarathi vessels. The enemy ships noticed them immediately, turning with fluid motions that no metal ship could match. The battle was unlike anything in human military history. The Zarathi fired living projectiles that writhed through space, seeking targets with malicious intelligence. Human kinetic rounds punched holes in organic armor that sealed itself within seconds. Energy weapons burned, through flesh-like hulls only to reveal more layers underneath. But humans adapted fast. Tony Rivers figured out that explosive rounds worked better than penetrators, turning vital organs into mush. Katie Wells discovered weak points where neural clusters controlled ship functions. Within an hour, human tactics had evolved to match the threat. Down on Viridian Prime, Steve Parker led the first human soldiers to meet aliens face to face. The bunker entrance was hidden beneath rubble that had once been a beautiful crystal spire. When the heavy door opened, both species stared at each other in wonder. The Viridians were everything the transmission had suggested. Tall, graceful beings with translucent skin that caught light like prisms. But these survivors were broken, traumatized by weeks of horror. Children clung to adults who had seen their entire civilization crumble. "Ambassador Keth?" Steve asked, his translator struggling with the musical Viridian language. An elderly Viridian stepped forward, his crystal, features marked by exhaustion. "You came. After all this time, across all that distance, you actually came." "Yes, sir. We're here to get you out." Keth's eyes filled with tears that sparkled like diamonds. We never expected. Your species owes us nothing. Why would you risk yourselves for strangers?" Steve looked around at the huddled families, the wounded soldiers, the children who reminded him of his own daughter back on Earth. "Because it's the right thing to do." The evacuation took 6 hours. Human soldiers carried Viridian wounded, shared their rations with hungry civilians, and played simple games with frightened children. Lieutenant Marie Johnson taught a group of young Viridians how to fold paper airplanes, their musical laughter echoing through the bunker. But it was the Viridian soldiers who provided the biggest surprise. They had been defending the bunker for 3 weeks, using tactics that human military doctrine would have abandoned as hopeless. Static defense, rigid formations, predictable patrol routes. "Why do you fight like that?" asked Sergeant Rick Stone as he helped treat wounded Viridian troops. "It is our way," replied Captain Zeth, their military leader. "We hold the line. We do not retreat. We do not adapt." Rick shook his head. "That's not fighting, sir. That's dying slowly. Let me show you something." Over the next few hours, human soldiers began teaching Viridian fighters new techniques, how to set ambushes, how to strike supply lines, how to disappear into the landscape and hit the enemy where they didn't expect it. The Viridians were amazed. Their crystalline features could express emotion clearly, and Rick watched understanding dawn on their faces as human tactics opened new possibilities. "You fight like the wind," Zeth said wonderingly. "You flow around obstacles instead of breaking." "Against them! We fight to win," Rick replied. "Not to die with honor." Above the planet, the space battle continued. The human fleet was outnumbered and outgunned, but they were learning fast. Captain Jake Morrison coordinated attacks that confused the bioship's organic targeting systems. When one Zarathi vessel tried to ram the Valiant, Jake ordered full reverse thrust at the last second, causing the enemy to overshoot and expose its vulnerable underside to concentrated fire. Dr. Helen Price worked frantically in the science lab, analyzing Zarathi tissue samples from destroyed ships. What she found made her blood run cold. "Captain," she reported over the comm, "these aren't just predators. They're adapted to consume sentient life specifically. Their digestive systems can process complex neural tissue and use it to enhance their own intelligence. They're not just killing the Viridians. They're absorbing their knowledge and memories." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. Every world the Zarathi conquered made them smarter, more dangerous. They were fighting an enemy that learned from every victory. "How long until they finish processing this planet?" "Based on the bio readings, maybe 12 hours. Then they'll move on to the next system." Jake made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "All ships, full retreat. We've got what we came for." The human fleet disengaged, leaving the Zarathi to finish consuming what remained of the outer planet. 3 bioships continued their grisly work, while 12 human vessels limped away with 1,000 Viridian survivors. As they jumped to hyperspace, Ambassador Keth found Jake on the bridge. The old alien looked older now, weighted down by the loss of his homeworld. Captain Morrison, my people wish to thank you. You saved lives today. Jake stared at the tactical display showing Zarathi movements. We saved 1,000 people, Ambassador. We left behind 4 billion. No, Keth said firmly. You saved hope. You proved that in this dark galaxy, there are still those who will fight for strangers. That knowledge will spread, Captain. Others will hear what humanity did here. Jake hoped the ambassador was right, because if word spread that humans were willing to fight the Zarathi, they would need all the help they could get. The war was just beginning, and Earth's small fleet was all that stood between the swarm and the rest of the galaxy. The Viridian survivors settled into human ships, sharing stories and knowledge. Children who had never seen humans before played with soldiers who had traveled farther than any human in history. And in the cargo holds, Viridian military officers learned human tactics that would soon spread to every species willing to listen. The galaxy was about to discover what humans meant when they said no one gets left behind. News of humanity's intervention spread through the galaxy faster than their ships could travel. The quantum communication networks that connected civilized worlds buzzed with reports of the strange mammals who had challenged the Zarathi for complete strangers. Dr. Helen Price found herself at the center of a scientific revolution. Her analysis of both Zarathi biology and human psychology had revealed something unprecedented in galactic history. As the human fleet regrouped at a Viridian refugee station, she presented her findings to a gathering of alien scientists via hologram. The Zarathi are perfectly adapted predators, she explained to the mixed assembly of crystalline Viridians, bird-like corvins, and aquatic aquarians. They consume sentient life to enhance their own intelligence. But humans are the first species they've encountered that shows pack-bonding behavior extending beyond their own kind. A corvin general named Hawkstrike ruffled his metallic feathers in skepticism. Pack bonding with other species is evolutionary suicide. Resources should be preserved for genetic relatives, Helen smiled. That's what every other species believes. General. But humans evolved differently. We domesticated other animals, formed alliances with other tribes, adopted children from enemies. Our pack extends to anyone we consider worthy of protection. And you consider us worthy? Asked Dr. Shimmersong, a Viridian scientist whose name was actually a complex musical phrase. We consider everyone worthy until proven otherwise, Helen replied. That's what makes us dangerous to the Zarathi. They can't predict our behavior because it's fundamentally irrational by their standards. The proof came 3 days later when Master Sergeant Rick Stone's unit encountered their first Corvan patrol. The proud bird warriors had been fleeing Zarathi expansion for weeks, their rigid military doctrine proving useless against bioship tactics. Primitive mammals, sneered Wing Commander Talon Sharp as his squadron prepared to pass the human ships. The Corvins have fought wars for 10,000 years while your species was discovering fire. Rick watched the Corvin formation through his tactical display. Perfect precision, beautiful formations, and completely predictable movement patterns. He opened a communication channel. Wing Commander, this is Master Sergeant Stone. You're flying straight into a Zarathi ambush. Impossible. Our sensors show no enemy presence. Sir, the Zarathi don't show up on conventional sensors. They're bioforms, remember? They mask their signatures using... The Corvin formation flew directly into 3 waiting bioships that uncloaked like predators striking prey. Energy blasts tore through armored hulls as living weapons sought out engine compartments with surgical precision. Rick didn't hesitate. All units, emergency burn. Get those birds out of there. The human squadron dove into the battle without orders, without backup, without any strategic advantage. They simply saw people dying and reacted instinctively. Tony Rivers blew a hole in the nearest bioship with a precisely placed mine. Katie Wells picked off Zarathi fighter forms with impossible shots from her ship's sniper cannon. Ben Adams flew his medical transport directly into the combat zone, pulling wounded Corvins. from disabled ships while biofighters swarmed around him. When Talon Sharp's command ship took critical damage, Ben personally spacewalked across to perform emergency medical aid on a species he had never seen before. The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it ended, the Zarathi were dead or fled, and 12 Corvan ships had been saved by human intervention. The proud bird warriors sat in their rescued vessels, trying to understand what had just happened. "Why?" Talon Sharp asked when Rick's ship docked with his to transfer medical supplies. "We insulted your species. We called you primitive. Why risk your lives for us?" Rick looked at the Corvan commander, noting the brilliant metallic feathers and fierce eyes that marked a lifetime warrior. "Because you were in trouble, sir. That's reason enough." Word of the rescue reached the Corvan hegemony within hours. For a species that valued honor above all else, humanity's actions presented a philosophical crisis. How could primitive mammals display more honor than the galaxy's most disciplined warriors? The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Sam Wright was negotiating with Aquarian refugees when their leader, Flow Current, made an observation that would reshape galactic politics. "Your species confuses us," the fish-like being admitted, her gill slits fluttering nervously. "When our homeworld fell, our allies calculated the cost of helping us. They decided we were not worth the resources. But you spend your own blood for people you have never met." Sam nodded. "That's what you do for family. But we are not your family. We are not even your species. Family isn't just about blood, ma'am. It's about who you're willing to fight for." This conversation was recorded and transmitted throughout Aquarian space. For a species that had been abandoned by their allies, the concept that strangers might consider them family was revolutionary. The real test came when engineer Paul Davis volunteered to modify Aquarian ships for long-term deep space travel. The aquatic species needed specialized life support systems that human technology could provide, but the work would take months and cost resources Earth could barely spare. "What do you want in return?" asked the Aquarian leadership. Paul looked confused. "Return for what? You need help? We're helping. That's how it works." The simplicity of the statement broke something inside the Aquarian survivors. For the first time since their homeworld's fall, they had hope, not just for survival, but for a future where someone actually cared about their welfare. Dr. Helen Price documented every interaction, building a psychological profile that amazed even her. "We're the only species that evolved altruism as a survival trait," she noted in her research logs. "Every other race helps others for strategic advantage. We help because not helping feels wrong." The breakthrough came when Ambassador Keth shared human tactical innovations with Viridian survivors scattered across 3 star systems. The crystal beings were natural strategists, but they had been locked into defensive thinking for millennia. Human guerrilla tactics gave them new hope. "Your people think like water," observed Captain Zeth during a joint planning session. "You flow around obstacles, find weakness, strike where the enemy is not prepared. It is beautiful." Lieutenant Marie Johnson smiled as she watched Viridian soldiers practice ambush techniques. "It's not beautiful, sir. It's effective. We don't fight fair. We fight to win." Within weeks, reports filtered in from across Viridian space. Scattered survivors were using human tactics to strike back at Zarathi occupation forces. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. For the first time since the war began, the swarm was being challenged. The psychological impact was enormous. Other species began to reconsider their assumptions about the Zarathi's invincibility. If desperate refugees could win battles using human methods, perhaps the swarm could be stopped. But it was a single incident that truly changed everything. When Corvan scouts reported a mixed group of survivors, Viridians, Aquarians, and even a few Corvans, working together using human-taught tactics, the galaxy sat up and took notice. "Impossible," declared the Galactic Council's War Analysis Committee. Different species cannot coordinate effectively. The biological incompatibilities alone. The biological incompatibilities are irrelevant, interrupted Dr. Helen Price via hologram. Humans don't see aliens. We see people who need help, and we're teaching everyone else to think the same way. The session ended in chaos as delegates from dozens of species argued about humanity's impossible behavior. But in the outer systems, where the Zarathi swarm continued its advance, something new was growing. For the first time in galactic history, different species were learning to fight as one. The galaxy was about to discover that humans didn't just rescue people, they created heroes. The Zarathi response was swift and terrifying. Intelligence reports flooded in from across the galaxy as the swarm accelerated its expansion. 3 more star systems fell in a coordinated assault that bypassed every conventional defense the galaxy could muster. Colonel Dan Miller studied the tactical displays aboard the human command ship Defender, watching red markers spread across the star charts like a plague. Each marker represented billions of dead, entire civilizations consumed by the bioship's endless hunger. They're not just reacting to our interference, he told the assembled fleet commanders. This is planned, coordinated. There's intelligence behind this, something that's been watching and learning for a long time. The evidence was undeniable. Zarathi forces had simultaneously struck the Corvan military academies, Aquarian research stations, and Viridian manufacturing centers. Not random targets, but the precise assets each species needed to resist effectively. Captain Jake Morrison felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. How many refugees are we looking at? Conservative estimate? 50 million displaced beings across 12 systems, reported Amy Foster from her communication station. And that's just the ones we know about. The scale was overwhelming. Earth's entire expeditionary force numbered less than 5,000 soldiers. Even with alien allies, they were a drop in the ocean against an enemy that seemed to anticipate every move. Major Ruth Clark's reconnaissance team brought back the worst news yet. Their stealth infiltration of a captured Corvan world had revealed the true horror of Zarathi operations. They're not just consuming populations, Ruth reported via encrypted transmission. They're converting them. I watched Corvan soldiers, people I recognized from our alliance meetings, being processed through biofactories. They come out the other end as Zarathi weapons. The silence on the bridge was deafening. Everyone understood the implications. Every person the Zarathi captured became a weapon against their own species. Friends, family members, entire populations turned into instruments of conquest. Dr. Helen Price's voice was hollow as she analyzed the data. The neural integration is complete. They retain memories, tactical knowledge, even emotional responses. But their loyalty belongs to the hive mind now. They're still themselves, but serving the enemy. Jake stared at the footage Ruth had captured. Corvan bird warriors with biomechanical implants, their proud features twisted by alien growths. Aquarian swimmers modified for vacuum combat, their graceful forms corrupted by living armor. Viridian crystal singers whose musical voices now coordinated swarm attacks. How long do we have before they hit the next systems? Based on current expansion rates, 6 days, Amy reported. The Zephyrian Empire is in their path. The Zephyrian Empire. Jake had studied their files during the journey to Viridian space, the most powerful military force in the galaxy, proud to the point of arrogance, rulers of 200 star systems. They had never acknowledged another species as equals, never asked for help, never shown weakness. Have we tried to contact them? Multiple attempts, sir. They refused to acknowledge our transmissions. Their response was... Amy paused, checking her notes. Inferior species need not concern themselves with Zephyrian affairs. Tony Rivers snorted from his position at the weapons console. Pride goes before the fall. Maybe, Jake said. But if the Zephyrians fall, the Zarathi gain access to the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. We need to help them whether they want it or not. The human fleet jumped to Zephyrian space, arriving just as the first bioships entered the outer system. The Zephyrian response was immediate and overwhelming. 300 capital ships arranged in perfect formation, weapons charged, shields at maximum. It wasn't enough. The Zarathi had learned from every previous battle. Bioships that adapted to energy weapons in real time. Fighter forms that used Corvan aerial tactics combined with Aquarian stealth technology. Boarding parties that included converted soldiers from every species they had conquered. Jake watched. The Zephyrian fleet tear itself apart trying to fight an enemy that used their own allies against them. Proud warships fell to weapons they had taught other species to build. Disciplined formations crumbled when they recognized friends and family among the enemy forces. All ships, attack formation, Jake ordered. We're going in. Sir, protested Katie Wells. We're outnumbered 50-1. This is suicide. Maybe. But those people down there are dying because they're too proud to adapt. Someone has to show them there's another way. The human fleet dove into the battle like a knife through silk. 12 ships against hundreds of biovessels, but those 12 ships fought like nothing the Zarathi had encountered. No formation flying, no predictable tactics, just pure aggressive improvisation. Ben Adams flew his medical transport directly through bioship formations, dropping emergency medical supplies on Zephyrian vessels while dodging living missiles. Tony Rivers turned his demolition ship into a guided bomb, ramming biovessels and detonating charges that sent shockwaves through entire enemy formations. But it was Commander Janet Hill who made the difference. Her ship, the Lightning, suffered critical damage while defending a Zephyrian carrier. With engines failing and life support offline, she had one choice: crash into the command deck of the nearest bioship or watch 3,000 Zephyrian civilians die. She chose to crash. The Lightning tore through the bioship's organic hull like a spear, Janet fighting to maintain control even as her ship disintegrated around her. The explosion that followed destroyed both vessels, but it also saved the carrier and everyone aboard. Captain Sam Wright coordinated the rescue effort, human ships pulling Zephyrian survivors from disabled vessels while the battle raged around them. It was insane, suicidal, and completely pointless from any strategic perspective. It was also the most honorable thing the Zephyrians had ever witnessed. The tide turned when Zephyrian Crown Admiral Brightwing saw human soldiers dying to protect his people. These inferior mammals were sacrificing themselves for the species that had rejected their offers of alliance. The cognitive dissonance broke something fundamental in Zephyrian military thinking. All ships, Brightwing transmitted on open channels, adopt human attack patterns. Forget formation doctrine. Fight like these brave mammals fight. For victory, not glory. The change was immediate. Zephyrian ships broke formation and began using the guerrilla tactics humans had pioneered. Their superior technology combined with human flexibility created devastation the Zarathi couldn't counter. When the battle ended, 60% of the Zarathi force was destroyed or scattered. The Zephyrian Empire had lost a third of their fleet, but they had won their first major victory against the swarm. Crown Admiral Brightwing stood in the ruins of his command deck, looking at the human rescue teams treating Zephyrian wounded. His golden features were marked by burns and exhaustion, but his eyes held something new: respect. "Commander Hill died saving my people," he said to Jake over the communication link. "A stranger who owed us nothing gave her life for Zephyrians." "Who had called her inferior?" Jake nodded. "That's what soldiers do, Admiral. We protect people." "No," Brightwing replied. "That is what heroes do. And I begin to understand that humanity produces heroes the way other species produce soldiers." The formal alliance was signed 3 hours later. For the first time in their history, the Zephyrian Empire acknowledged another species as equals. But more than that, they requested to learn human tactics, human philosophy, human ways of thinking about warfare. The news spread across the galaxy within days. The mighty Zephyrians, humbled by defeat, had been saved by the same primitive humans who were teaching refugees to fight back. Military analysts from a dozen species began studying human methods, trying to understand how such a small force could achieve such impossible victories. Dr. Helen Price documented it all, building a database that would reshape military thinking for generations. "We're not better fighters," she noted in her reports. "We're better at making other people into better fighters. We don't just win battles, we create the conditions for others to win their own wars." But the Zarathi were learning too. Intelligence. Reports suggested the hive mind was adapting to human tactics, creating new forms specifically designed to counter human flexibility. The next battle would be different, harder. Captain Sam Wright proposed the solution during a strategy meeting that included representatives from 6 different species. "We need to stop reacting to them and start making them react to us. It's time to take the fight to their home systems." The room fell silent. Attack the Zarathi in their own territory? It had never been attempted. It was military suicide. It was also the most human thing anyone had ever suggested. The impossible was happening across the galaxy. Ancient enemies were setting aside millennia of hatred to fight alongside the species they had once tried to destroy. The call for unity had come from the most unlikely source, a small blue planet, whose inhabitants refused to let anyone fight alone. Captain Nick Turner found himself coordinating the largest interspecies military operation in galactic history. His command ship, the Unity, served as a floating United Nations, where former enemies learned to work together. The bridge crew included Corvan tactical officers, Aquarian navigation specialists, Viridian communications experts, and Zephyrian weapons technicians. "Status report," Nick called out as he entered the command center. "Fleet strength is at 60% and climbing," reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hill, Janet's younger sister who had requested transfer to the front lines after her sister's death. "We've got 230 capital ships from 8 different species, plus support vessels." Nick studied the holographic display showing ships from across the galaxy converging on their position. Corvan bird ships with their elegant curved hulls flew alongside blocky Aquarian submarines modified for space combat. Zephyrian dreadnoughts bristled with weapons, while Viridian science vessels hummed with energy shields that protected entire formations. "Any word from the Hegemony Council?" "They're still debating," Amy Foster replied from her expanded communication station. "Apparently, some delegates are having trouble accepting that their ancient enemies are now allies." The political situation was almost as complex as the military one. Species that had fought wars for thousands of years were being asked to trust each other completely. Old grievances, territorial disputes, and cultural differences threatened to tear the alliance apart before it could strike back at the Zarathi. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Flo Current, the Aquarian scientist who had first understood human pack bonding behavior, made a discovery that changed everything. "The Zarathi hive mind is not just controlling converted populations," she reported during the daily intelligence briefing. "It's absorbing their cultural knowledge, their prejudices, their ancient conflicts. Every species they consume makes them better at dividing their enemies." The implications hit the command staff like a cold wave. The Zarathi weren't just using physical conversion, they were using psychological warfare based on stolen memories. They knew exactly which old wounds to reopen, which insults would break alliances, which fears would paralyze their enemies. "That explains the targeted attacks," realized Crown Admiral Brightwing, his golden features darkening with understanding. "They hit the Corvan honor worlds first, knowing it would make them fight recklessly. They destroyed Aquarian diplomatic stations to isolate them from potential allies." Nick nodded grimly. "They're not just conquering territory. They're preventing us from uniting against them." The solution came from the humans, as it so often did. Master Sergeant Rick Stone was training mixed species units when he noticed something remarkable. Soldiers from different races fought better, together when they focused on protecting each other rather than competing for glory. "It's not about being the best," he explained to a mixed squad of Corvin and Zephyrian troops. "It's about making sure everyone goes home. Watch each other's backs, cover each other's weaknesses, and forget about who gets credit for the kill." The training sessions became legendary throughout the fleet. Human drill instructors taught alien soldiers not just tactics, but philosophy. How to think like a pack instead of a hierarchy. How to adapt instead of following doctrine. How to value lives over victories. Captain Tony Rivers worked with Viridian engineers to develop new weapons that combined the best of each species' technology. Corvin precision guidance systems merged with Aquarian stealth fields and Zephyrian energy weapons, all powered by Viridian crystal matrices and controlled by human tactical computers. "It shouldn't work," muttered Chief Engineer Paul Davis as he watched the hybrid systems come online. 6 different technologies from 6 different design philosophies, but somehow, it's the most effective weapon system anyone's ever built, finished Dr. Helen Price. Because it's not just technology, it's cooperation made manifest. The real test came when former enemies were forced to serve together on the same ships. Corvin Wing Commander Talon Sharp found himself working alongside Aquarian Fleet Singer, Deep Current, 2 species whose last meeting had ended in warfare. "Your people destroyed our orbital gardens," Talon Sharp said during their first joint briefing, his metallic feathers rustling with barely controlled anger. "Your people blockaded our spawning grounds," Deep Current replied, her gill slits fluttering, nervously. "3 generations of our children died because of your actions." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Both species' honor codes demanded satisfaction for past wrongs. Under normal circumstances, they would have fought each other instead of the real enemy. But Lieutenant Marie Johnson was there, representing the human perspective. "Sir, ma'am, with respect, the Zarathi are counting on you to fight each other. Every minute you spend settling old scores is a minute they use to kill more civilians." She activated a holographic display showing real-time intelligence from Zarathi-occupied systems. Cities burning, populations being processed, children being converted into weapons. The images were devastating in their clarity. "These people don't care about your old wars," Marie continued. "They just want to live. Are you going to help them? Or are you going to let pride get more people killed?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Both alien officers stared at the images of suffering that their old conflicts seemed petty by comparison. "The human is right," Talon Sharp said finally. "Honor means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. I will work with anyone who shares that goal." Deep Current's musical voice harmonized with agreement. "The water flows around obstacles, seeking the path to the sea. If working with former enemies serves the greater current, then we swim together." Similar scenes played out across the fleet as human mediators helped alien species overcome centuries of mistrust. It wasn't easy, and it didn't always work, but gradually a new kind of unity began to emerge. The moment that defined everything came during a joint training exercise. A mixed squadron was practicing assault tactics when their simulation was interrupted by a real emergency. A civilian transport carrying refugees from 6 different species had suffered catastrophic engine failure and was drifting toward a gravity well. The rescue mission required perfect coordination between former enemies. Corvin pilots provided escort, while Aquarian engineers managed life support. Zephyrian heavy lifters handled the evacuation, while Viridian medics treated the wounded. Human coordinators managed the entire operation, ensuring that ancient prejudices didn't interfere with saving lives. 1,500 people, reported Ben Adams as the last shuttle docked with the rescue ships. Different species, different languages, different cultures, but everyone went home safe because we worked together. The psychological impact on the fleet was enormous. Soldiers who had fought each other for generations discovered they could accomplish more together than they ever had alone. Old enemies became trusted allies, not because they forgot their differences, but because they found something more important than their conflicts. Dr. Helen Price documented the transformation in her research logs. Humans aren't just teaching alien species new tactics. We're teaching them a new way to think about identity. Instead of us versus them, we're creating us and us and us, an expanding definition of who deserves protection. The final proof came when the Galactic Council formally dissolved itself and reformed as the Allied Defense Force. For the first time in recorded history, every major species agreed to subordinate their individual interests to a common cause. Crown Admiral. Brightwing was elected Supreme Commander by unanimous vote, but he immediately made Nick Turner his deputy, acknowledging that human tactical philosophy was essential to their success. "We are no longer Zephyrians or Corvins or Aquarians," Brightwing announced to the assembled fleet. "We are the sword and shield of every innocent life in the galaxy. We are the answer to those who cry for help." The fleet that gathered at the edge of Zerathi space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Former enemies flying in perfect formation, their differences transformed into complementary strengths. 6 different species united by a simple human concept, that protecting others was worth any sacrifice. Nick Turner looked at the tactical display showing 800 ships ready for battle. Each vessel represented not just military power, but the revolutionary idea that strangers could become family. "All ships, this is unity actual," he transmitted on all frequencies. "Today we take the fight to the enemy's home, not for conquest, not for revenge, but for every person who has cried for help and found no answer. Today we become the answer." The Allied fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with them the hopes of 1 trillion souls and the promise that no one would ever have, to face the darkness alone again. The Allied fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zerathi core systems and immediately found themselves facing a nightmare beyond imagination. The enemy had been waiting for them. Admiral Frank Torres stood on the bridge of the Unity, watching as sensors revealed the true scope of what they faced. Hundreds of bioships clustered around 3 massive hive worlds, each one a living planet covered in organic structures that pulsed with malevolent intelligence. "Fleet composition?" he asked, his voice steady despite the horror filling the main screen. 837 bioships confirmed, reported Corvin Tactical Officer Sharp Eye. "Unknown number of fighter forms. And sir, we're detecting converted population centers on each hive world, millions of sentient beings all under hive mind control." The weight of that settled on everyone's shoulders. Those weren't just enemy. Soldiers down there. They were victims, people who had been stolen from their families and turned into weapons. Any attack on the hive worlds would kill the very people they had come to save. Captain Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system from his position with the assault group. "Admiral, we knew this would be the hardest part. We can't save everyone, but we can prevent this from happening to anyone else." Frank nodded, knowing Jake was right, but hating the mathematics of war that reduced living beings to acceptable losses. "All ships, battle formation. Remember, our goal is the central hive mind. Everything else is secondary." The battle began, with a coordinated assault unlike anything in galactic military history. Zephyrian dreadnoughts provided covering fire while Corvin fighters swept ahead to clear fighter forms. Aquarian stealth ships slipped through enemy formations to plant explosives on vital bioship organs. Viridian energy weapons carved through living armor, while human tactical coordinators adapted strategy in real time. For the first hour, everything went according to plan. The Allied fleet pushed through the outer defenses, their combined technologies proving superior to anything the Zerathi could field. Species that had fought each other for millennia worked in perfect harmony, their old conflicts forgotten in the face of common purpose. Then the Zerathi revealed their trap. "Admiral!" called out Communications Officer Amy Foster, her voice tight with alarm. "We're receiving transmissions from the hive worlds. They're from the converted populations." The main screen filled with faces that froze the blood of every Allied soldier. Corvan officers they had fought beside, their proud features now marked by biomechanical implants, Aquarian diplomats whose musical voices now sang songs of conquest, Viridian civilians whose crystal features had been corrupted by organic growths, but worst of all were the humans, members of the original Earth Expeditionary Force who had been captured during early battles, their familiar faces now serving the enemy. Captain Morris Day, who had been Jake's academy roommate, Lieutenant Susan White, who had saved a dozen alien children during the Viridian evacuation. "Jake," Susan's voice came through the speakers, her tone flat and emotionless. "You came back, for us. How touching. But we serve the greater purpose now. We understand what you cannot, that unity requires submission." Jake's face went white as he stared at his former comrade. "Susie? Oh, God, what did they do to you?" "They freed us from the burden of individual choice," Morris replied, his voice equally dead. "The hive mind has shown us perfect order, perfect peace. Surrender now, and you can join us. Resist, and we will be forced to destroy you." The psychological warfare was devastating. Soldiers across the Allied fleet hesitated as they recognized friends, family members, and comrades among the enemy forces. How could you fire on people you had sworn to protect? The Zerathi pressed their advantage, launching wave after wave of converted populations at the Allied fleet. Corvan soldiers found themselves fighting their own young, who had been captured and processed into biomechanical weapons. Aquarian ships faced schools of their own children, turned into living torpedoes that sang their parents' names as they attacked. "All ships maintain formation," Frank ordered, but he could hear the strain in his own voice. "Remember, those people are victims. We're here to free them." "How do we free the dead?" demanded Crown Admiral Brightwing as his ship came under attack from converted Zephyrian civilians. "They retain their memories, their personalities, but their souls belong to the enemy." The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Helen Price, analyzing the neural patterns of the converted populations, made a breakthrough that changed everything. "They're not lost," she announced over the command frequency. "The hive mind controls their actions, but their core personalities are still intact. It's like a prison of the mind. The real people are still in there screaming to get out." The Ace revelation sparked something in the Allied forces that the Zerathi had never encountered before. Instead of pulling back in horror, the fleet pressed forward with renewed determination. These weren't enemies to be destroyed. They were people to be rescued. Lieutenant Chris Hayes led the charge, his squadron diving into a formation of converted Corvan fighters. Instead of firing to kill, they used precise shots to disable biomechanical implants, trying to free the pilots trapped inside their own corrupted bodies. "Target the control nodes, not the host," he transmitted to the fleet. "We're not fighting an enemy. We're performing surgery on a galactic scale." The shift in tactics caught the Zerathi completely off guard. They had expected the Allies to be paralyzed by the sight of converted populations, or to be demoralized by having to kill their own people. They hadn't expected humans to find a third option. Sergeant Kelly Woods led her assault team in a desperate boarding action against a bioship filled with converted civilians. Instead of explosive charges, they carried medical equipment and neural disruptors designed to sever hive-mind connections. "Every person we free is a victory," she told her mixed-species team as they cut through living corridors. "Every mind we liberate weakens the enemy." The fighting was unlike anything in military history. Soldiers advanced not to kill, but to heal. They risked their lives not to destroy enemy positions, but to rescue the people trapped inside them. It was insane, inefficient, and completely impossible by any rational military doctrine. It was also the most human thing anyone had ever attempted. The turning point came when Captain Tony Rivers managed to disable the neural control center aboard a hive ship. Suddenly, thousands of converted Viridians found themselves free, their crystal features clearing as the alien influence lifted from their minds. The psychological impact on the Zarathi was immediate and devastating. For the first time in their existence, they faced an enemy that could undo their most powerful weapon. Panic rippled through the hive mind as they realized their converted populations could be turned back against them. But the cost was enormous. Human ships burned as they pressed impossible attacks, their crews dying to save people they had never met. Alien allies sacrificed themselves to protect rescue operations, their last thoughts focused on the civilians they might save. Major Ruth. Clark watched her ship's hull breach as she coordinated the evacuation of a converted Aquarian colony ship. "Tell my daughter I died doing what humans do best," she transmitted as her life support failed. Saving people. The battle raged for 18 hours, with neither side able to gain decisive advantage. The Allied fleet had the firepower to destroy the hive worlds, but doing so would kill millions of innocent people. The Zarathi had the numbers to overwhelm the Allies, but their own converted populations were being systematically freed and turned against them. It was Captain Sam Wright who finally identified the solution. Deep in the heart of the largest hive world, sensors detected a massive biostructure unlike anything they had encountered before, the original hive mind, the ancient intelligence that controlled the entire swarm. "That's our target," he announced during an emergency command conference. "Kill the brain, and the body dies. Free the hive mind's control, and every converted population in the galaxy goes free." The assault would require a direct attack on the most heavily defended position in Zarathi space, through layers of bioships and converted defenders into the heart of a living world that would fight them with every organ and antibody. "It's suicide," observed Wing Commander Talon Sharp. "Probably," Sam agreed. "But it's also the only way to save everyone. The question is, who's willing to die to free 1 trillion strangers?" Every hand in the room rose without hesitation. The final assault began at dawn, ship time. Every Allied vessel that could still fight formed up for the last, pushed toward the hive mind's core. Behind them, rescue ships evacuated the freed populations while medical teams worked frantically to heal the neural damage caused by hive mind control. As the fleet dove toward the largest hive world, Jake Morrison looked around his bridge at the mixed crew of humans and aliens who had become his family. In a few hours, most of them would be dead. But their sacrifice would ensure that no one else would have to suffer what the converted populations had endured. "All ships," he transmitted on open frequencies, "this is for everyone who ever cried for help and found no answer. Today, we become the answer." The Allied fleet plunged into the heart of the hive world, carrying with the final assault on the hive world was madness transformed into strategy. Captain Jake Morrison led the spearhead assault through living corridors that writhed and contracted around his ship like the throat of some cosmic beast. Behind him, the surviving human fleet burned their way deeper into the organic structure, sacrificing everything for one impossible chance. "Hull integrity at 30%, reported Katie Wells from her tactical station. The Valiant's armor was being dissolved by acidic secretions from the hive world's immune system, but Jake kept pushing forward. "Sir, we can't take much more of this." "We don't have to take much more," Jake replied, watching the navigation display as they approached the central chamber. "Just enough to reach the core." Around them, the Allied fleet was dying. Zephyrian. Dreadnoughts melted under bioacid attacks, while Corvan fighters were consumed by living walls that closed like hungry mouths. Aquarian stealth ships flickered and died as the hive world's nervous system adapted to detect them. Viridian energy shields overloaded and collapsed under the assault of 1 trillion antibodies, but for every ship lost, they pushed deeper. Human. Engineering teams sealed breaches with their own bodies, buying precious minutes for their comrades to advance. Alien soldiers fought back-to-back with humans, their old differences meaningless in the face of shared sacrifice. The communication, channels filled with final messages as ships went dark. "Tell Earth we made it count," transmitted Commander Steve Parker as his vessel was crushed by muscular contractions. "Tell them we saved everyone we could." Admiral Frank Torres coordinated the assault from the Unity, even as his own ship came apart around him. Biofighters swarmed through the hull, but mixed human-alien teams fought them off with desperate courage. Crown Admiral Brightwing died defending the command center, his last words a song of honor that would be remembered by every surviving Zephyrian. "Admiral," Amy Foster called out from her damaged console, "we're receiving a signal from the core chamber. It's the hive mind. It wants to talk." The main screen flickered to life, showing an image that defied description. The original hive mind was ancient beyond measure, a massive organic brain the size of a city, neural pathways thick as highways, pulsed with electrical activity that controlled 1 trillion minds across the galaxy. When it spoke, the voice was composed of every being it had ever consumed. Human voices mixed with alien languages, creating a chorus of the enslaved that was both beautiful and terrifying. "So you have come to die for strangers," the hive mind said, its words carrying the accumulated wisdom and malice of eons. "I understand. Your species now. Humans. You are the anomaly that my calculations could not predict." Jake stepped forward, representing not just humanity but every free mind that had ever refused to surrender. "We've come to free the people you've enslaved. Release them, and we'll find another way to settle this." The ancient intelligence laughed, a sound like breaking stars. "I am order, human. I am perfect unity, perfect peace. I offer every mind in the galaxy freedom from choice, from conflict, from the pain of individual existence. Why do you fight such a gift?" "Because choice is what makes us alive," Jake replied. "Without the freedom to choose, we're just organic machines. And that's not living. That's just existing." The hive mind's attention focused on him with the weight of a collapsing star. "You would condemn trillions to the chaos of individual will? To war, suffering, loneliness, and death? I offer unity beyond your species' primitive pack bonding. I offer true peace." "We've seen your peace," interrupted Captain Sam Wright as his ship broke through into the core chamber. "It's the peace of the grave. You don't unite people, you erase them." The chamber filled with allied ships, each one battered and dying but still fighting. Less than 50 vessels remained from the 800 that had begun the assault, but they pressed forward with the determination that had carried them across the galaxy. The hive mind unleashed its final defense, waves of converted populations, but these were different. Not just body-snatched soldiers, but completely integrated beings whose personalities had been seamlessly merged with the alien intelligence. They fought with the skill of their original selves, but the cold efficiency of the hive. Among them were humans from the original expedition. Captain Morris Day led a squadron of biofighters against his former friends. His tactics flawless, but his humanity gone. Lieutenant Susan White coordinated defensive positions with mechanical precision, her voice devoid of the warmth Jake remembered. "You, see?" The hive mind taunted. "Even your own kind choose unity over chaos when they understand the truth. They are happier now, free from the burden of individual choice." But something unexpected happened. As the converted humans fought against their former comrades, cracks began to appear in their perfect unity. Muscle memory kicked in. Susan instinctively moved to protect a wounded Viridian soldier. Morris hesitated for a critical second when targeting Jake's ship. Dr. Helen Price, working frantically in the Unity's damaged science lab, detected the neural fluctuations. "The human personalities are fighting back," she announced. The hive mind can control their actions, but it can't completely erase who they are. The revelation sparked a desperate plan. If the converted humans retained some core identity, perhaps that could be used against the hive mind. Human troops across the fleet began broadcasting personal messages to their captured comrades. "Susan, remember the night we got caught in that thunderstorm on Luna Base?" Jake transmitted on open channels. "You said thunder was just the sky laughing. You made me promise to always find something to laugh about no matter how bad things got." For a moment, Susan's biofighter wavered in its attack pattern. Her voice came back, cracked and uncertain. "Jake, I can't. The voice in my head." "Morris, you still owe me 50 credits from that poker game," called out Tony Rivers, as his ship exchanged fire with his former Academy roommate. "You said you'd pay me back when hell froze over. Well, buddy, this is close enough." One by one, the converted humans began to falter. Their personalities, suppressed but not destroyed, fought against the alien control. The perfect unity the hive mind had created began to crack as individual will reasserted itself. The ancient intelligence screamed in rage and confusion. "Impossible! I am order! I am unity! Individual consciousness cannot resist complete integration." "You don't understand humans very well," Jake said as he guided his ship toward the massive brain structure. "We're stubborn that way. We don't give up. We don't surrender. And we sure as hell don't let anyone tell us who we're supposed to be." The final assault was led by humans, but fought by every species that valued freedom. Zephyrian energy weapons carved through neural pathways while Corvin precision strikes severed major control nodes. Aquarian infiltration teams planted charges in critical support systems while Viridian shields protected the assault teams. But it was human determination that made the difference. Soldiers who should have died hours ago kept fighting, kept pushing forward, kept believing that impossible odds just meant they had to try harder. Captain Sam Wright made the killing blow, his ship's engines overloading as he rammed directly into the hive mind's central cortex. The explosion that followed sent shockwaves through the entire structure, severing billions of neural connections in an instant. The hive mind's death scream echoed across psychic frequencies, a sound of pure anguish as the ancient intelligence felt its perfect unity shatter into chaos. Across the galaxy, converted populations suddenly found themselves free, their minds their own again for the first time in years. But the cost was everything. The Unity listed helplessly as its hull cracked open, atmosphere bleeding into space. Jake watched his crew, human and alien alike, giving their lives to maintain life support for the rescued civilians. The Valiant's engines failed, leaving them drifting in the dying hive world's collapsing structure. "Admiral Torres," Jake transmitted as his ship's power systems shut down one by one. "This is Valiant, actual. Mission accomplished. The hive mind is dead. All converted populations are free." Frank's voice came back weak but proud. "Understood, Captain. You did good, son. You all did good." As Jake looked around his darkening bridge, he saw Katie Wells helping wounded Viridians to the escape pods. Tony Rivers was rigging the ship's remaining explosives to clear an escape route for civilian transports. Ben Adams worked frantically to save a Corvin child who had been caught in the crossfire. They were all going to die here, light years from Earth, in the heart of an alien structure that was collapsing around them. But they had saved everyone they could, and that was enough. "Captain," Katie said quietly, "the escape pods are loaded with civilians. Should we—" "No," Jake replied. "We stay with the ship. Someone needs to make sure those pods get clear." As the escape pods launched, carrying the last survivors toward the rescue ships, Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair and watched the stars through the cracked view screen. Earth was somewhere out there, safe because of what they had done here. The galaxy was free because humans had been too stubborn to let evil win. Admiral Lisa Carter's final transmission reached them just before the hive world's collapse. Earth's Children die far from home so the galaxy's children can live in theirs. The fleet remembers. The galaxy remembers.